where we're going to find outliers. We have the stats for the 5 starters on the Virginia basketball team from 2019, and we're going to determine if there are any outliers in the set. So remember, an outlier is 3 standard deviations away from the mean. First thing we need to do is find our mean. So I would like you guys to pause the video so that you can find that yourself, or at least try to find it yourself. Remember, mean is the same thing as the average. So go ahead and pause the video and find that. In order to find the mean, you would add up those 5 numbers, and then you divide by 5 because that's how many values we have. And you should get 15.8 as your mean. We need to use the mean in order to actually find our standard deviation. So what we're going to do is take all 5 of those numbers, starting with 9, and I'm going to subtract the mean. And then I'm going to square that number. And then I'm going to add it to the rest of them. So the next number in our table, first there were 9 points. The next number is 24. So you take 24, subtract the mean of 15.8, and then you square it. I have to do this with all 5 numbers in the chart. So these are our 5 numbers, 9, 24, 27, 16, and 3. I'm going to subtract 15.8 from each of them. Then I'm going to square all of those values, and then I'm going to add them all together. So if you just start by subtracting, I would encourage you to do this on your own before I do it. If you start with subtraction, you should get the following. All I've done is subtracted the numbers inside of the parentheses. So 9 minus 15.8 is negative 6.8, and so on. Now I'm going to go through and square all of these values. I would encourage you to do that on your own. When you square all of your values, you should end up with the following. So you square all of those values, and then you add them all together. When you add them all together, you should get 402.8. We're almost to the standard deviation, I promise. Once you have this number, we must divide it by the number of values in the set. So I'm going to take the 402.8 and divide by 5 because there were 5 numbers to begin with. This gives us 80.56. This is known as your variance. The notation for variance is sigma squared. Once you have your variance, you are one step away from your standard deviation. All you need to do is take the square root of your variance. That rounds to about 8.98. So we have our mean, now we have our standard deviation. The last thing we need to do is figure out if we have any outliers using what we just found. I use a number line to do this. What we're going to do is put the mean or the average right in the middle. Then to go to the right, you add one standard deviation to go to each space. If you move to the left, you subtract one standard deviation to move to the next space. So if I add one standard deviation, I would be adding 8.98 to my 15.8. That gives me 24.78. If I go to the next space, that's 2 standard deviations away from the mean. So I'm going to add my 8.98 again. That gives me 33.76. And then 3 standard deviations from the mean, I would be adding that 8.98 again. You get 42.74. So this right here is 3 standard deviations above the mean. If I go the other direction, I'm subtracting. So if I do 15.8 minus 8.98, I get 6.82. If we subtract again, I get negative 2.16. If I subtract again, I get negative 11.14. So in order for us to have an outlier, someone would have had to score less than negative 11.14 points, which makes no sense in a basketball game, or someone would have had to score more than 42 points in this game. Well, in the table that we used, none of those people scored more than 42 points, 42.74 points, and nobody scored negative points. So we have no outliers.